Well, it's you raise a good point because we have seen, Russia step up certainly for Syria. We've also seen Egypt, I believe Saudi Arabia, some other players come into force here. From this and from your previous experience, do these humanitarian crises, do they tend to sort of reinforce the alliances that are already in place, or is this an opportunity? Is Assad seeing this as an opportunity to, shift his own brand for the international community because, he clearly wants Syria to re-engage in some way. I don't know if you feel he's using this crisis in ways that could cause humanitarian strife down the road.
Absolutely. And it could not be clearer, could it, that this is the crisis that we are seeing now with the earthquake is the result of the type of policies of repression and the ability for the UN Security Council to be held hostage by Russia, which exercises its veto power, and combined with Assad's refusal to let the border be fully open. Now, if he had wanted to respond in a humanitarian way, he would have opened up the borders fully. And there are 5 border crossings into northwestern Syria from Turkey alone. And of course, there are several other countries bordering which enable access. He would have done that last Monday. This is a political calculus. We were heading towards a Security Council vote, looking for another resolution to expand the single border crossing to include 1 or 2 others. Now, that in itself is a really limited response, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we're sort of stuck on these 1 or 2 additional border crossings and getting beyond a renewal period of 6 months. And yet we need to have our ability to respond maximally flexibly. I mean, emergencies like earthquakes, you can't respond to them in this very, very narrow way. And at the same time, we see Assad try to look like a responsible leader, where he's now opened up the borders under intense pressure. And at the same time, for Russia, it avoids a showdown at the Security Council because no longer we don't need to go to the Security Council anymore to look for another resolution. So it can concentrate on Ukraine. At the same time, it's only for 3 months, Diane.
Yeah.
And so not much can really be done in 3 months. And Russia still gets to try and curtail the whole cross-border response again in July. And what we need is actually to stay enough already. This is a nonsense way to respond. Earthquakes are global, affect us globally, but we have to be able to respond collectively in a way that recognizes that this massive loss of human life or human life vulnerability trumps borders.
Very much so. One last question, Dr. Sparrow, which is really, are there any lessons from this in how we need to shift our approach to these sorts of humanitarian crises? I mean, much of this feels like it's out of our control, but in terms of what is within our control, what can we take away from this? Because these politically stressed areas also often tend to be areas that are, natural disaster zones.
Yes. And certainly, I mean, this earthquake happened in a very dense area in Turkey, in southern Turkey, where you see it's full of high-rise apartment buildings. And then you see in across Syria, then people are living in camps. And so in a fairly obscene way, people were saying that Syrians even had a survival advantage because they weren't at risk of having these massive apartment buildings collapse on them. Moving forward, what we're seeing now is the same old argument about cross-border, cross-line, as in convoys from Damascus to opposition-held areas. And these have never worked. That's why we have a cross-border resolution enabling us to give aid. And we also have, at the same time, all these countries, and the US too, of course, already providing aid in Turkey. Turkey is willing for countries to provide aid to Northwest Syria directly. There's no impetus on governments to adhere to a Security Council resolution. The borders are open. Many countries have already provided aid directly, including Spain, including Saudi. What we need here is to say, let's do it for ourselves. I mean, the concern is is great to see. And this type of massive earthquake offers a moment for us to mobilize not only our physical resources and our logistical capacity, but our human infrastructure, and enables us to reconnect and think, well, let's go for it, let's do it. Let's start providing aid in the only manner in which is sustainable moving forward, because we cannot be hung up on these petty laws which are artificial in making, which then restrict our ability to actually respond to now and coming shocks.
Yeah.